I'd say of every city in Hampton Roads, Norfolk is the number one place that people I think misunderstand before they get here. And when they do move here, they often regret making the decision or wish they had moved somewhere differently in the city. So what I want to do today is talk to you about 10 rules that will help you if you plan to move to Norfolk, Virginia, how to make the best decision and maybe decide if you should move here at all. So the first rule I want to talk to you about is, now the first one involves people's expectations of what the city of Norfolk is. And this is, don't expect change quickly. Now, I love Norfolk. I'm a huge fan of Norfolk. I love how Norfolk is right now. I love the vibe of it. I like, Ghent. I like areas around Ghent. I like, the north side, the south. I like the feel of what Norfolk is, and it's an older city. But not everybody likes it. Not everybody likes all of the city. And some people think, well, you start seeing new construction in some parts of town. You think, well, if I see new houses, that means that the area might be going through some changes. That might be the case, but it might not. And sometimes that change that you might be expecting because of new construction coming into the area might take 25 years to fully change the way you're expecting, as opposed to 2 or 3. Some people, if you look into other parts of the country, you might see some widespread, big new construction projects happening that just completely changes the dynamic and the vibe of an area. That doesn't really happen here. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of it's because the houses that are here are already still standing and they're in good shape, and people don't really find it productive to knock houses down and build here. So my point is that you will see new houses in older parts of town. You will see newer things happening, like, for example, around the Park Place area. There are some industrial areas that have new restaurants and things burgeoning there close to Ghent. It's an area that's getting newer. Same with Lambert's Point. But a lot of places, as you see new houses be put in a lot of parts of Norfolk, those houses are still new houses in old areas. And expecting that whole area to change based on just the house that you bought that is new construction, or several houses you bought that are new construction, it's not really realistic, because you will see that over time, 15, 20, 25 years, those areas still might not be that much different than they were before. Again, this is not to say it's a negative thing necessarily. It's just that seeing what Norfolk is now, I would suggest, while big positive changes are happening in the city, don't necessarily expect the whole area to change overnight. That leads me to the next one is, get a list of civic leagues in the city. There are some amazing neighborhoods in Norfolk. And a lot of these neighborhoods, like I mentioned before, you might see a neighborhood you like, but you're like, I'm not sure if this is where I want to be. And some questions arise if you want to live there or not. Well, civic leagues can be some great resources of information to find more information about the neighborhood. So you can go online. You can go and look at on Norfolk City website the list of civic leagues they have available for contact info. And if you find one that you see in there, you can potentially reach out to people in the civic league to get more information. This is very helpful because the people in the civic league most likely live there and they know the neighborhood. They are very involved in their neighborhood. So getting information from the civic leagues is super important and super helpful and valuable if you've never lived in Norfolk before. You can get some specific details that I don't think you can get in other places. And the people that are in the civic leagues will really want great people to live in their neighborhoods. And so this is a great way to connect with the neighbors as well. Now, the next one is get very granular with your street knowledge. What does that mean? Well, that means that Norfolk is a very old city. There are neighborhoods in Norfolk that you'd see some of the class of Hampton Roads, some of the nicest neighborhoods in Norfolk. But you might only go half a mile, and all of a sudden that whole vibe changes. And the differences in what you'd find from one spot of Norfolk to another can change so fast that I think people that don't expect that, they expect, maybe if they're coming from a different part of the country that has the same type of house all through parts of the area. Norfolk is not really like that. There are different pockets that feel the same and some that feel quite different, but all it takes is going from one street to the next and you might feel totally different. It could be a lot of variety of price ranges as well. For example, if I show you on the map where Norfolk is right here next to the Elizabeth River. Going down, for example, Larchmont is an awesome neighborhood in the western side of Norfolk. But as you go down through Old Dominion, and this area in Old Dominion, the area where Larchmont is, it feels totally different than the area just south, which is Lambert's Point or Kensington. Areas over here are very different than right up the road on Larchmont. Same thing, Colonial Place down next to Park Place, which is right next to that. These areas feel very different. And it's not that, some people have different preferences. Or, for example, going up to Ocean View along the water, it feels like the beach. You've got beachfront houses along the ocean. Then you cross one street over and you've got these small, little one-story Cape Cod style houses that could be anywhere from, 300 to 500. totally different vibe as you cross Ocean View Avenue, for example. This type of thing happens a lot in Norfolk. And so each individual street or each individual section or corner or neighborhood has to be treated in the fact that if you drive out of the neighborhood, what does that feel like to you? Does it feel different? Do you like the area around the neighborhood that you like? It's not just the street. It's not just the neighborhood, but it's the entirety of the area, because it can change from street to street. So doing as much research before you move as far as what the areas feel like, what areas you like the most, driving through different parts of the area and getting a sense of the vibes of different parts of town really can affect where you might want to move and where you might not want to move. So that leads me to the next one in the research stage, which is assume flood insurance is required in any house that you get, but it may not be required. Norfolk in general is an area that I'd say for any area in Hampton Roads has the highest propensity to have houses that require flood insurance. Part of that's just because it's near the Elizabeth River. There are a lot of creeks, a lot of fingers of the Elizabeth River, the Lafayette River. There are multiple rivers and creeks and canals and all these types of waterways that are around Norfolk, not to mention the ocean itself. Combine that with the low-lying areas that do exist in Norfolk, and over time the rising tidal waters, you find yourself in a situation where flood insurance is required on a lot of places. Now, again, some of it depends on street location and intersections, and it's not just the fact that when I say flood, I don't necessarily always mean that it's going to flood your house. It might just mean flooding the street. It might be where you're parking makes a big difference. So if you have a low-lying car, you might want to factor in where you're parking your car if you do buy a house in Norfolk. Now, again, that's a general concept. Once you get into different parts of Norfolk, there are a lot of parts that don't need it at all, but it also factors in payment. So sometimes you might see a house that's cheaper in Norfolk, but because there's flood insurance, that payment will be higher than you may have expected because of that extra, $50, $100 or more dollars a month in flood insurance that might be added on to the price. And that quote wouldn't be listed on the MLS. And that's something you can talk to your real estate agent and also an insurance company to get quotes on what the flood insurance might be if you need it at all. The next is think long and hard about school choice. This is not to say anything except that if you look on rankings on niche.com, great schools, other places that do rankings for schools, you will find that Norfolk's rankings are kind of all over the map, and each individual school has different ones. So that can make people want to either go to a specific school or go private school. And so knowing this, not just the rankings, because again, to me, the rankings can tell different stories based on what you're looking for. So I talk to neighbors, I talk to people in the city, people anyone that you can think of that might have information about the specific school, not just the district, but even the elementary school, middle school. Getting that information will be most helpful so you can know, A, if you should move into the area based on the school district that you want to be in, and also if it's not, maybe price out private schools, Norfolk Christian, Norfolk Collegiate, Norfolk Academy. There are other private schools that are in Norfolk that people often go to if they don't want to do the public school route. Now, in addition to that, though, people often group a specific school district into the broader kind of category of where they should move or not move. But sometimes you'll find that, if you don't like the middle school, you might like the elementary school or vice versa or something along those lines. So I would say get very specific with that. But again, do as much research as you can so you can make a good decision. Next is one I don't think people think about enough, which is factor in the rentability of the house that you're looking at. And I mean buying a house, then with the idea of once you leave again or move again, what can you rent the house for and how much return can you get for how much you're paying for the house? Not to say that you won't want to live here if you move here. It's more of, I'm a big fan of Norfolk as a place to own rental property. And one of the reasons is because it's close to military bases. There are some spots that are very close to bases that really have some draw for people that want a very close drive to work if they're in specific military bases in Norfolk. But in addition to that, Norfolk's prices, median sales prices, are generally lower than what you'll find in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. Now, what that often means is you can get a better ratio of rent for what you're paying for the house if you do choose to keep the house and rent it over time. You might not get as much rent for the house in Norfolk, but for how much you paid for the house, you might get a better return on your investment. The next is consider water and sewer line insurance coverage. So I'll talk about this a lot about Norfolk, where it's an old area with a lot of old houses. And a lot of these old houses have some old water and sewer lines that come from the house and go to the street. Could be cast iron, could be galvanized pipe, could be Orangeburg, which is one that you hear about sometimes. These pipes can break down, especially if you have trees in your yard. Those roots can break into those drain lines as well and can cause a problem over time. Taking those lines out can be very costly. I mean, upwards of $10,000+. I have not had experience with it yet, but Dominion Energy has advertised that they will do insurance for these drain lines from the house to the street. So look up sewer line insurance, Dominion Energy. You'll find some information about this specific insurance that I'm talking about. I don't have personal experience with this insurance, so definitely look it up and get more details about what is covered and what is not, which leads me to the next one, which is prepare for old systems in your house. Well, again, most of Norfolk are old houses, 1920s, 1910s, 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So with that comes old electrical systems, maybe not updated at all, older plumbing like that, the sewer lines and water lines, maybe ungrounded electrical, for example, that might need rewiring, slate roofs that look like they do last a long time, but maintenance can be costly. These things, while they might just be it's kind of part of the package when you buy an older house, especially in Norfolk, it's just good to know that. So if you do want to make any changes, you can budget for it accordingly. Now, some of these I'm talking about are kind of the most extreme cases or most costly things. And a lot of the houses don't require a lot of these to be all redone at the same time or at all in some cases. But it's good to know that if you do plan to look into older houses in Norfolk, that's one thing you need to focus on, is that these houses have old house materials, which can lead to old house problems. The next is zero in on grocery stores. Okay, what this means is that Norfolk is known for having a lot of houses, but not a lot of shopping. There are some spots specific that have shopping, like Ghent, for example, has maybe the biggest access to shopping, but most of Norfolk doesn't have any grocery stores. So if I look up grocery stores in Norfolk, you'll see a lot of food lines, right? A couple of food lines, a fresh market, some smaller ones. There's a Harris Teeter down here near Collie, and there's the Colonial Avenue Harris Teeter there. So you'll find some. There's not too much happening all through a lot of Norfolk. And then the ones that are there are maybe smaller scale, mom and pop shops, like even sometimes gas stations, some small ones. Maybe an Aldi or a Walmart might be through here too. But in general, most of the shopping is going to be all through most of Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. And so if you do want to live close to grocery stores in Norfolk, just make sure you see where those are and make sure you know which ones you like. I find that people that want close shopping tend to go towards Virginia Beach or Chesapeake because it's just, you can kind of make a turn and 5, 6, 7 minutes away, and you're finding a lot of options, not as opposed to not as much in Norfolk. The next is watch for odd parking restrictions. A lot of this is in specific parts of Norfolk, but Norfolk being, again, an old city, they even still have street sweepers, and that leads to weird signs. For example, Ghent, there are parts of Ghent, as you go down through a lot of these streets around Collie and Colonial and all through town, you'll see signs that say no parking like on Wednesday morning on one side of the street and no parking on Tuesday morning on the other side of the street. There are some, like for example in Talbot Park, there's a street, I think it's Sinclair Brackenridge, I can't remember which street it was, that's one way on Sundays. There are some quirky road signs, and there are some parts in that same neighborhood where you got 2-hour parking during the week. That happens a lot in Norfolk. These little things can be annoying to me, and I think that if you do plan to move to the area and you're kind of thrown into the mix and you see these little quirky signs and requirements and rules in different parts of the area for parking, this can be frustrating and makes it harder to get acclimated to the area faster. So if you have any more questions about relocating to Norfolk or any other area through Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, through Williamsburg, let me know. It's what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. So if you have any questions, I have my contact information in the description. You can email me, you can call me, you can text me, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.